Welcome to chapter 18 of the book of 2Chronicles. It begins, and there came to Jehoshaphat still much riches and glory. And he was allied by marriage with the house of Ahab. Who is Ahab? Ahab was the king of Israel at this time. There were a few other kings of Israel that are not mentioned here, between Asa and then his father Jehoshaphat. And they were basically military men who were warring against each other and taking the reign and then being killed by another military person until Ahab. And Ahab lasts for, I'm not sure how many, 30 years or so that he reigned. He was one of the longest reigns in Israel. And Ahab is mentioned basically in 1 Kings 18 to 21. And he was married to Jezebel, who was the daughter of Ithbaal of Sidon, which is right by Tyre in Lebanon today. And the god of Sidon was Baal. And Jezebel bowed down to Baal, worshipped Baal. And in 1 Kings 18:18, we have the story of Elijah the prophet, who was basically a prophet to Israel, and the prophets of Baal, and that story you can read. And then a major story that happened with Ahab that's not mentioned is the story of Naboth's vineyard, where Ahab takes the land by the guile of his wife Jezebel, an evil woman. And Jehoshaphat, went down at the end of years to Ahab in Samaria. Well, now, going down in the Bible here means going down from Jerusalem, which is higher up. He actually went up on a map, north, to Ahab, who was in Samaria. And Samaria was the capital of Israel. Earlier, it was Tisra was the capital, and Omri, the king, made Tisra the capital, and then he purchased a hill in Samaria called Shamron, which means Samaria. And so therefore, this area up north of Jerusalem, let's see, we have a map here, and right here. So here is Samaria, right here, and down here is Judah. And we're going to find out that there's a battle brewing with Ahab and Jehoshaphat from Israel against the king of Syria and Damascus at Ramoth Gilead, and that's over there east of the Jordan River. And Ahab sacrificed to him sheep and calves in abundance, and to the people with him, and persuaded him, Jehoshaphat, to go up with him unto Ramoth Gilead, that is for war. And Ahab, the king of Israel, said to Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, will you go with me to Ramoth Gilead? So that would be against the Syrian king, as we find out. And he said to him, as you, so also I, and as your people, also my people, even with you for war. Well, these people in the north, they were no longer worshiping Jehovah that was in Judah and Jerusalem in the temple, the Lord, Yahweh. They were worshiping the golden calves that Jeroboam had set up earlier. So right here we see the king of Jehoshaphat allying himself with unbelievers, idolaters from the north. And when that happens, something bad is going to happen, and we'll continue and find out what that is. And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, that's Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, well, let us seek indeed today the word of the Lord. Now, he didn't say the word of the calves up north, but the word of the Lord. But he was in the country of the north, where there was the calf worship. And the king of Israel, Ahab, gathered the prophetas, the prophets, synagogen, the synagogue, a gathering, basilephs, a basil, plant, all these are derivatives from these yellow words. 400 men. And he said to them, well, shall I go to Ramoth Gilead for war, or should I wait? And they said, ascend, and God, they didn't say the Lord, God shall give them into the hands of the king. And Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, said, well, is there not here a prophet of the Lord yet, that we should seek anxiously by him? Because they were seeking by these other prophets. And the king of Israel, Ahab, said to Jehoshaphat, well, there is one man to seek the Lord through him, and I detest him, for he is not prophetevon, prophesying, that's a verb for prophecy, for good things concerning me. For all his days are for kaka, bad. He is Micaiah, son of Imlah. So we have now 400 against one. 400 false prophets to one true prophet. Micaiah, the son of Imlah, and he follows the Lord, and you can find out more about this in 1 Kings 22, which is very similar to what we're going through here. And Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, said, let not the king of Israel, that would be Ahab, speak thus. And the king of Israel, it was Ahab, called one of his eunuchon and said, eunuch. And for you that don't know what a eunuch is, it's an emasculated male that no longer has all of his sexual organs intact. And said, quickly call Micaiah, son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, were sitting each epi thronon, upon his throne. Thronon is a transliteration. Being clothed with stolas, a stole is a word for a robe that was used many years ago. And they sat down in the broad space at the door of Samarias. And all the prophets, prophetae, were prophesying before them. And Zedekiah, son of Hananiah, made for himself horns of iron, and that is like a ram's horn of iron. He made it out of metal, and he said, thus says the Lord. Now, he does use the word Lord here, which is interesting. With these you shall gore the Syrian until whenever he should be finished off entirely. And all the prophetae, prophetevon, thus, saying, ascend into Ramoth Gilead, and you shall prosper in the way, and the Lord will give it into the hands of the king. And the angelos, a messenger going to call Micaiah, spoke to him, saying, oh, behold, the prophets spoke good things with one mouth concerning the king. So these 400 all saying to go, but he says, and let your words be indeed as one of them, and you shall speak good things. So they're coercing him into going along with the evil. And so much, there's always somebody that's there coercing us to go along with evil. It comes from Satan, I believe. And Micaiah said, well, as the Yahweh, the Lord, lives, that whatever God should say to me, it I shall speak. And he came to the king. And the king said to him, Micaiah, shall I go to Ramoth Gilead for polemon? War, polemics, a derivative, or should I wait? And he said, send. Your way shall prosper, and they shall be given into your hands. He's saying this, what they wanted him to say, but his heart really wasn't in it, of course, because we find that out here. And the king said to him, how often shall I bind you by an oath that you should not speak thus to me, except the truth, in the name of the Yahweh, Jehovah, the Lord, Kyrio? And Micaiah said, all right, I see Israel, all being scattered in the mountains, as sheep in which there is not a shepherd. And the Lord, Jehovah, said, these have not a leader. Let them each return to his house in peace. So the not having a leader shows that something is going to happen to Ahab. And the king of Israel, Ahab, said to Jehoshaphat, well, said I not to you that he would not prophesy for my good, but only caca? And Micah said, it is not so. Acousate, here, acoustics, a logon of the Lord. I beheld the Lord sitting upon his throne, and all the dynamics of the force of the Uranu of the heaven stood beside at his right and from his left. And the Lord said, well, who shall deceive Ahab, king of Israel, that he shall ascend and shall fall in Ramoth Gilead? And this one spoke thus, and this other one spoke thus. And came forth a spirit, and stood in the presence of the Lord, and said, now, this is an interesting, one of the most interesting lines in the Old Testament. Now, what is the Spirit? The Spirit, generally, every place I see it, when it mentions the Spirit, to pneuma, as it does here, it's talking about the Godhead. The Spirit, God, the Ruah in the Old Testament, but it's the Spirit. So that means it would be God, the Spirit of God. And he stood in the presence of the Lord and said, I shall deceive him. And it's a he because it says, and it's in the masculine. And so now, is this the same Spirit that Jesus says that he is sending? I suppose it is. I mean, it's something to study a lot. Some people would say, well, this could be a spirit of the devil, or, well, I suppose you could argue that point well because of what happens here. Or it could be like a demon spirit that will try to deceive. It's a deceiving spirit. That could be argued well, too. So which is it? Well, then the Lord said, well, by what means? And he said, the Spirit, well, I shall go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, well, you shall deceive and shall prevail. Go forth and do so. Well, see, now God is going along with it. If it was an evil spirit, I don't think he would say go and do it. I don't know. It doesn't sound right. It sounds like God is allowing this, and he is allowing the Spirit to do, basically say something, and the person that takes it in is being deceived or deceiving themselves in a way because these prophets should have never been listened to because they are not prophets of the Lord. They're prophets of these golden calves. So there's the fine line of when God doesn't want anybody to be lied to, but yet he will allow, in many places, he allows people that have already made the decision to do evil, and he hardens the heart of Pharaoh, and he hardened the heart of Judas. When they want to do the evil, then they are allowed to do it, and it achieves God's purpose, because he says that the king of Israel shall fall in Ramoth Gilead, and Judas. The purpose was to betray the Lord, and he would be crucified. But that was a plan of God. And now, behold, the Lord put a lying spirit in the mouths of all these your prophets. And this is Micaiah explaining it to him. They're all speaking lies. And the Lord spoke against you for bad things, and that is that he is going to fall. But these men weren't. So there he's bringing out the truth. The Lord spoke against you for bad things, that the king would fall. But yet, that's not what these prophets are speaking for bad things. And Zedekiah, son of Hananiah, approached and struck Micaiah upon the jaw, and said to him, But what way passed the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak to you? So he's making fun of him, ridiculing him. And so Micaiah said, Well, behold, you shall see in that day in which you shall enter closet by closet to hide. So now Micaiah is giving the prophecy, and the prophecy will come to pass, proving that he is the true prophet. So the advisors to the king were giving him bad advice, and we should beware also of who we get advice from. If we're getting it from ungodly people, people that are worshiping the golden calves or something other than Jehovah, Jesus, then we should beware of whatever they are advising. Maybe not even take their advice into consideration, because it's not good advice. And the king of Israel said, and that would be Ahab, Take Micaiah and return him to Ammon, the ruler of the city, that's Samaria, and to Joash, the son of the king, that's his son. And you shall say to them, Thus said the king, Put this one into a prison house, and let him eat bread of affliction and water of affliction, until my returning in Irene, peace. Irene, the name Irene means peace. And Micaiah said, If by returning you should return in peace, the Lord spoke not by me. And he said, Hearken, all peoples. Micaiah, listen to what I'm saying. This is it. This is the truth, basically. And the king of Israel, Ahab, and Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, ascended to Ramoth Gilead. They went across the Jordan up, and the king of Israel, Ahab, said to Jehoshaphat, I shall cover up and enter into the battle, but you put on my clothes. And the king, my clothes. So basically, he is making a deception, but the deception fails, especially when it comes to the Lord. You're not going to deceive, and maybe he wanted to do that because he didn't want the prophecy of Micaiah to come true. So he's going to make himself cover himself up in a different way. So, but the deception, when it comes to the Lord, doesn't work. We can't deceive to have the Lord's will altered in any way. And he entered into the battle, the Polemon, the king of Israel. And the king of Syria gave charge to the heads of the chariots, Armaton, with him, saying, Do not polemite, wage war. There's the polemics, polemo is war, and here we have the verb wage war, with the mikron and the megon, the small and the great, micro and mega, but the king of Israel only. And it came to pass, as the archontes, the ones in charge, the archons, saw, archons of the chariots, armaton, we have armament, comes from that, saw Jehoshaphat, that they said, it is the king of Israel, but he wasn't. He's the king of Judah. And they encircled Jehoshaphat, him to do battle, polemin. And Jehoshaphat yelled, and the Lord delivered him. And God turned them from him. So it wasn't Jehoshaphat's time yet. But it was Ahab's. And it came to pass, as the ones in charge of the chariots saw that it was not the king of Israel, that they turned from him. And a man stretched tight a bow, toxon. We have a toxology, had to do with poisons, and the bows earlier had poison arrows. Stretched tight a toxon skillfully, and he struck the king of Israel between the lungs and between the thorax, the chest, or a chest plate, something that was covering him. And Ahab said to the charioteer, "Turn your hand and lead me from out of battle, for I am wounded." Polemon, for tetravmatisme, travma, I'm wounded. And the polemos turned in that day, and the king of Israel was set upon the chariot right opposite Syria until Hesperus evening, and he died in the going down of the Eliu. Helium comes from that word, of the sun. So Ahab dies as God said, as the prophet said, and then the prophet shows how it all came about with the plan of God, Jehovah, with the Spirit, and his will was done on earth. We continue with Jehoshaphat in chapter 19. Find out more about it when we get there, and I hope you'll join us in chapter 19. God bless.